Every Friday night, the same scene played out at the Rosewood Hotel. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Wealthy guests in designer clothes laughed and clinked glasses. And there, weaving between tables with a tray balanced perfectly on her hand, was Lisa. 3 years. That's how long she'd been doing this job. 3 years of smiling politely while people looked right through her. 3 years of excuse me and coming through and enjoy your evening. To the guests who paid hundreds of dollars for these fancy events, Lisa was invisible. Just another server in a white shirt and black vest, there to keep their glasses full and their plates cleared. But Lisa had a secret. A big one. Something nobody in that glittering ballroom would ever guess just by looking at her. She used to play piano, not just play it. She was really, really good at it. There was a time when Lisa's whole world revolved around music. She'd wake up thinking about Chopin. She'd fall asleep with Beethoven running through her mind. Her fingers were always moving, practicing invisible keys on any flat surface she could find. Dinner tables, bus seats, her own knees. She'd gotten into one of the best music schools in the country. Full scholarship. Her teachers said she had something special. That spark that separates people who play notes from people who make music come alive. They talked about concert halls and recording contracts. They said she could go far. Lisa believed them. Why wouldn't she? The piano wasn't just what she did. It was who she was. Then everything changed in her final year of school. Her mom got sick. Really sick. The kind of sick that comes with hospital bills that pile up faster than you can count them. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. There were medications that cost more than rent. Treatments that drained their savings in weeks. Lisa tried to keep going at first. She'd practice between hospital visits, study music theory in waiting rooms, but you can't focus on arpeggios when your mom is losing weight she can't afford to lose. You can't perfect a concerto when the phone keeps ringing with calls from medical billing departments. The choice, when it came down to it, wasn't really a choice at all. She dropped out 3 months before graduation, packed up her tiny dorm room, sold her keyboard because she needed the money, started looking for work that would actually pay the bills. That's how she ended up at the Rosewood Hotel, carrying trays instead of playing sonatas. Her mom recovered eventually. Slowly, gradually, she got better. But by then, Lisa was trapped. The medical bills had turned into regular bills. Rent, groceries, her mom's ongoing medications. There was never enough left over to think about going back to school. Never enough to even consider taking time off for auditions or practice. The piano became something she tried not to think about. Like an old friend she'd lost touch with. It hurt less that way. Tonight felt just like every other Friday night. At least at first. The ballroom was packed with the usual crowd. Rich donors in expensive suits and glittering jewelry. Everyone was there for some charity concert thing. Lisa didn't pay much attention to the details anymore. Her job was simple. Serve the champagne, clear the plates, stay out of the way. But she couldn't help noticing the piano. It sat right in the center of the stage, spotlights making it gleam like a jewel. A Steinway grand. The same kind her music school had in their main concert hall. Lisa had played one exactly like it during her final recital before everything fell apart. She tried not to look at it as she worked. Tried not to remember how it felt to sit on that bench, to feel the weight of the keys under her fingers, to hear that rich, full sound fill a room. Every time she passed near the stage, though, her eyes drifted back to it. The smooth black finish. The perfect curve of its body. She could almost feel the cool ivory keys even from across the room. "Excuse me, miss? More water, please." Lisa snapped back to reality. Right, she was working. She wasn't a pianist anymore. She was a server. This was her life now. The concert was supposed to start at 8. Some famous pianist was scheduled to play. The guests had paid serious money to be here, squeezing into every available seat. The ones who couldn't get chairs stood along the walls, champagne in hand, waiting for the show to begin. Lisa found a spot near the kitchen doors where she could watch without being in the way. Part of her job was staying available in case anyone needed anything. But honestly, she wanted to hear the music. It had been so long since she'd heard a live performance. So long since she'd let herself remember what that felt like. The pianist walked out to huge applause. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that comes from performing for decades. He sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, flexed his fingers, then he started to play. The music hit Lisa like a wave. Rachmaninoff, one of the hardest composers to play well. Every note demanded something from you. Technical skill, sure, but also emotion, soul. You had to pour yourself into it. The pianist was good, really good. His fingers flew across the keys, pulling out cascades of sound that made the whole room hold its breath. Lisa stood frozen, one hand gripping her empty tray. She wasn't in the ballroom anymore. She was back in her practice room at school, working on this exact same piece. She could feel her fingers moving along with his, muscle memory kicking in after all this time. Her right foot almost tapped out the pedal changes. For those few minutes, she wasn't a server. She was a musician again. Then about 20 minutes into his performance, something went wrong. The pianist suddenly stopped mid-phrase. His hands jerked away from the keys. His face twisted in pain as he grabbed his right wrist with his left hand. A gasp went through the audience. People leaned forward in their seats trying to see what happened. The event coordinator rushed onto the stage, her high heels clicking frantically against the floor. Lisa couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw the pianist shaking his head, saw him flexing his hand, wincing, saw the coordinator's face go pale with panic. After a moment, the coordinator stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was tight with barely controlled stress. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we're experiencing a technical difficulty. Our performer is dealing with a sudden muscle strain. We're going to take a brief intermission while we assess the situation." The audience erupted in confused murmurs. People checked their phones, probably looking up whether this kind of thing was normal. The coordinator hurried off stage, already pulling out her phone, frantically making calls. Lisa watched all of this from her corner near the kitchen. Watched the beautiful Steinway sitting there on stage, silent and waiting. Watched the coordinator getting more and more desperate as call after call apparently went nowhere. And something stirred inside her chest. Something she'd buried 3 years ago. Something dangerous and hopeful and absolutely terrifying. Her heart started pounding. Her palms got sweaty. Every logical part of her brain was screaming that this was crazy, that she should stay quiet, that she should just do her job and let the professionals handle this. But her feet were already moving, carrying her toward the coordinator before she could talk. Herself out of it, this was probably the stupidest thing she'd ever done, but she had to try. Lisa's legs felt like jelly as she walked toward the coordinator. Each step seemed to take forever. Her mind was racing with a million reasons to turn around and go back to the kitchen. This was insane. She was a server. Nobody was going to take her seriously, but something stronger than fear kept pushing her forward. Maybe it was the years of silence. Maybe it was seeing that piano sitting there untouched and waiting. Maybe it was just that she'd spent too long being invisible. The coordinator was near the edge of the stage, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in rapid, hushed tones. Her face was flushed, and even from a few feet away, Lisa could hear the desperation in her voice. "I don't care if he's in the middle of dinner. Get him here." "What do you mean he's out of town? This is a disaster." Lisa cleared her throat softly. The coordinator didn't notice. She tried again, a little louder. "Excuse me." The coordinator spun around, her expression annoyed at being interrupted. Her eyes swept over Lisa's server uniform with barely concealed impatience. "Not now. Whatever it is, ask someone in the kitchen." "I can play," Lisa said quickly before she lost her nerve. The coordinator blinked. "What?" "The piano. I can play it. I can finish the program." For a second, the coordinator just stared at her like she'd started speaking another language. Then her expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost like anger. "This isn't funny. I'm dealing with a serious situation here." "I'm not joking," Lisa said, her voice steadier now. "I studied classical piano. I know the repertoire. I can do this." The coordinator looked at her again, really looked at her this time, taking in the cheap black pants, the standard issue server shirt, the sensible non-slip shoes. Her eyes said everything her mouth didn't. "You're just a waitress. Look, I appreciate the offer, but this is a professional concert. These people paid thousands of dollars to be here. I can't just put a random staff member on stage." Something hot flared in Lisa's chest. Random staff member. Like she was nobody. Like those years of training, all those hours of practice, all that talent her teachers had seen in her. None of it mattered, because she was carrying a tray now instead of playing Carnegie Hall. "I'm not random," Lisa said, and her voice had an edge to it now. "I trained at the Westfield Conservatory. I had a full scholarship. I've performed this exact program before. I know every piece that was scheduled for tonight. The coordinator's expression flickered. Westfield Conservatory. That name meant something, even to people outside the music world. It was one of the top programs in the country. You didn't get in there unless you were seriously talented, but she still looked doubtful. If you're so qualified, why are you working here? It was a fair question. A brutal one, but fair. Lisa felt the old shame rising up, the failure she'd tried so hard to bury. Life happened, she said simply. But my fingers remember. I can do this. The coordinator glanced back at the stage, then at her phone, then at the growing restlessness in the audience. People were starting to check their watches. A few had already gotten up to leave. This event was falling apart, and every second made it worse. She looked at Lisa one more time, and something in her expression changed. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was something she saw in Lisa's eyes. Some flash of the musician she used to be. The opening piece on the second half was Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. The coordinator said, her voice sharp. Can you play it? Lisa didn't even hesitate. Yes, right now? Without practice? Without sheet music? Yes, the coordinator's jaw tightened. She was weighing an impossible choice. Risk putting an unknown server on stage, or watch her carefully planned event completely collapse. She made a decision that was probably 50% desperation and 50% having no other options. Fine. One piece. If you mess up, if you embarrass this event, you're done. Not just tonight. I'll make sure you never work another event in this city. Understand? Lisa nodded. She understood perfectly. This was her one shot. No second chances. Give me 2 minutes to prepare the audience, the coordinator said, already moving away. Stand by the stage entrance. Lisa's hands were shaking as she walked to the side of the stage. Actually shaking like she'd had too much coffee. She pressed them together, trying to steady them. This was really happening. She was really going to do this. Around her, other servers were starting to notice something was going on. A few of them drifted closer, whispering to each other. She caught fragments of their conversation. Is that Lisa? What's she doing? No way. She's not actually going to. On stage, the coordinator had returned to the microphone. She'd fixed her face into a professional smile, but Lisa could see the tension in her shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience, she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. We've had an unexpected change to tonight's program, but I'm pleased to introduce a very special performer who will be completing the evening's concert. She paused, and Lisa saw her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Please welcome Lisa Chen to the stage. The applause was polite but confused, scattered. People were looking around, trying to figure out who she was. When Lisa stepped out from the wings, still in her server uniform, a ripple of whispers went through the audience. Is that the waitress? What's going on? Is this part of the show? Lisa felt every eye in the room on her. 70 of the wealthiest, most influential people in the city, all staring at the server girl who thought she could play piano. She could feel their skepticism like a physical weight. Some people looked amused, like this was entertainment in itself. Others looked annoyed, like their evening was being wasted. A few looked genuinely curious, but nobody, absolutely nobody, looked like they believed she could actually do this. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Her mouth was dry. For one terrible second she thought she might throw up right there on stage. But then she looked at the piano, the beautiful Steinway Grand, its surface reflecting the stage lights. She dreamed about pianos like this during those long nights of serving drinks and clearing plates. Dreamed about what it would feel like to play one again. She crossed the stage, and each step felt more real than the last. The bench was exactly the right height. She sat down, and it felt like coming home after a long, exhausting journey. Lisa looked out at the audience one more time. Saw the doubt, saw the skepticism, saw a few people already checking their phones, probably texting friends about the bizarre turn this fancy event had taken. She placed her hands on the keys. The ivory was cool and smooth under her fingers, exactly like she remembered. Her right foot found the pedal automatically. Her back straightened, her shoulders relaxed. Everything else fell away. The audience, the coordinator's threats, the years of serving and struggling and pretending she was fine. None of it mattered anymore. There was just her and the piano and the music waiting to be played. She took one deep breath, and she began. The first chord rang out, powerful and commanding. Those famous opening octaves of Rachmaninoff's Prelude, the ones that announce themselves like thunder. Lisa's fingers struck the keys with authority she'd forgotten she had. And just like that, she wasn't a server anymore, she was a pianist. The moment Lisa's fingers touched the keys, something inside her unlocked. It was like opening a door she'd kept sealed for 3 years. Behind it was everything she'd tried to forget. Every scale she'd practiced until her fingers ached. Every late night in the practice room when she was the last one to leave. Every performance where she'd felt the music flowing through her like electricity. All of it came flooding back. Her hands moved across the keys with a confidence that surprised even her. Muscle memory took over, her fingers finding the right notes without her conscious mind having to direct them. It was like riding a bike, except the bike was a 9-foot concert grand and she was racing down a mountain. The Prelude in C-sharp minor is not an easy piece. It's the kind of music that exposes every weakness, every hesitation. There's nowhere to hide. The famous opening, those deep resonating chords, they demand power and control at the same time. Too soft and they disappear. Too hard and they sound clumsy. Lisa nailed them. Each chord rang out clear and strong, filling the ballroom with rich, dark sound. Her foot worked the pedal exactly when it needed to, letting the notes blend and sustain, creating that haunting, almost gothic atmosphere that makes this piece so memorable. She wasn't thinking about technique anymore. She wasn't thinking about the audience or the coordinator or the fact that she was still wearing her server uniform. She was just playing. The music moved into the faster middle section and her fingers flew. Rapid passages that require precision and speed, notes cascading over each other like water rushing downstream. Lisa's hands were a blur. Right hand dancing in the upper register, left hand providing the deep, driving bass line that pushes the whole thing forward. And something else was happening too. Something beyond just playing the right notes. She was feeling it, really feeling it. Every emotion she'd bottled up for 3 years came pouring out through those keys. The frustration of dropping out when she was so close to graduating. The exhaustion of working double shifts to pay bills that never seemed to stop coming. The grief of walking past music stores and forcing herself not to look in the windows because it hurt too much. All of it went into the music. Her whole body was engaged now. Leaning into the powerful chords. Pulling back for the softer moments. Her face showed everything she was feeling. None of that careful server smile she'd worn for so long. This was raw. This was real. The ballroom had gone completely silent. People who'd been checking their phones had put them away. The ones who'd been whispering to each other had stopped. Even the servers standing by the kitchen doors had frozen. Trays forgotten in their hands. Everyone was watching Lisa. But more importantly, everyone was listening. In the third row, a woman in a designer dress leaned forward in her seat, her champagne glass forgotten in her hand. Her eyes were wide, her lips slightly parted. She'd come to this event expecting background music, something pleasant to accompany her networking. This wasn't that. This was something else entirely. Near the back, a man in an expensive suit slowly sat up straighter. He was the head of a major tech company, someone who'd sat through countless concerts over the years. He knew music. He knew talent when he heard it. And what he was hearing right now was making the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The coordinator stood frozen at the side of the stage. She'd expected at best a competent performance that would save her from complete disaster. She hadn't expected this. Her mouth was slightly open, her earlier skepticism completely forgotten. Lisa didn't see any of them. She was lost in the music now. In that place performers go when everything else disappears. The ballroom could have been empty or packed with thousands. It wouldn't have mattered. She was playing for herself now. For every version of herself she'd had to push down and ignore. The piece built toward its climax. The music got louder, more intense, the chords pounding like a heartbeat. Lisa's hands moved with absolute certainty. No hesitation, no doubt. Just pure, focused intention. This was the moment that separates good pianists from great ones. Anyone with enough practice can learn the notes. But to make those notes mean something, to make them grab people by the heart and not let go, that takes something else. Something you can't teach. Lisa had it. She'd always had it. She'd just forgotten. The final section arrived. The return of that haunting opening theme, but quieter now, more reflective. After all the storm and drama, this is the moment of stillness. Lisa's touch on the keys became gentle, almost tender. Each note placed carefully like she was handling something precious. A woman in the front row felt tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't even know why. She couldn't explain what this music was making her feel. Just that it was reaching something deep inside her that she'd forgotten was there. More people were crying now. Not sobbing, just quiet tears sliding down cheeks. The music had cracked something open in the room. All these wealthy, powerful people who spent their days in boardrooms and galas, always composed, always in control. The music was stripping all that away. Lisa played the final measures. The piece ends the same way it begins, with those deep, resonating chords. She struck each one with perfect weight, letting them ring out into the ballroom. The last chord hung in the air. Lisa kept her hands on the keys, let the sound fade naturally. The pedal sustained it, the note getting softer and softer until finally it disappeared into silence. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence after great music is different from regular silence. It has weight to it, substance, like the air itself has changed somehow. Then someone started clapping. Not polite applause. Not the kind of measured, appropriate clapping you get at fancy events. This was explosive, like something had been building up in the room and suddenly burst. Within seconds, everyone was on their feet, all 70 guests standing and applauding. The sound was deafening, bouncing off the high ceilings of the ballroom. People weren't just clapping. They were shouting, calling out. A few were still crying. The woman in the designer dress was on her feet, hands clasped together, her face showing pure joy. The tech CEO was clapping so hard his hands were probably going to hurt tomorrow. Even the servers had broken protocol. They were clapping too, some of them whooping. A couple of the kitchen staff had poked their heads out to see what was going on, and they joined in. Lisa sat at the piano stunned. She'd expected polite applause, maybe, the kind you get for not screwing up. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected people to be standing. Hadn't expected to see tears on faces. She stood up slowly, not quite sure what to do. She'd performed before back in school, but never like this. Never to a reaction like this. The applause kept going. And going. It felt like it would never stop. A man in the front row, older with silver hair and an expensive watch, was clapping with his hands over his head. His eyes were bright with something that looked almost like relief. Like he'd just witnessed something he'd been waiting his whole life to see. That man was Robert Torres, and he ran the city's biggest performing arts center. He attended hundreds of concerts every year, heard thousands of performers, and he knew with absolute certainty that he'd just watched something special. The coordinator was climbing up the stage steps, her face completely transformed. The skepticism and doubt were gone. Now she just looked amazed. But the real moment was happening in Lisa's chest. Standing there on that stage, in her server uniform with a room full of people on their feet for her, something fundamental shifted. For 3 years, she told herself that chapter of her life was over, that she was just a server now, that the pianist she'd been was gone. She'd been wrong. That person had never left. She'd just been waiting. The applause finally started to fade, but the energy in the room hadn't dimmed at all. If anything, it felt even more charged. People were turning to each other, talking rapidly, gesturing toward the stage. Lisa could see the excitement on their faces, even if she couldn't hear what they were saying. She took a small bow, still not quite believing this was real, and started to walk off stage. Her legs felt shaky, like she'd just run a marathon. The adrenaline was wearing off and reality was starting to creep back in. She was still just a server. She still had a tray of dirty glasses waiting for her somewhere. This had been one moment, one beautiful, impossible moment, but now it was over. Time to get back to real life. But before she could make it to the wings, the coordinator caught her arm gently. "Wait," she said, and her voice was completely different now. Warm, almost apologetic. "Stay here for a moment." Lisa stopped, confused. The coordinator was already walking back to the microphone, her heels clicking against the stage floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "that was Lisa Chen, who I'm sure will remember this evening for a very long time. Let's give her one more round of applause." The clapping started up again, and Lisa felt her face getting hot. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. For 3 years, her job had been to stay invisible, to blend into the background. Being the center of attention felt uncomfortable and thrilling at the same time. As the applause died down, Lisa saw movement in the front row. The older man with the silver hair was standing up, making his way toward the stage. He moved with purpose, like someone who was used to getting what he wanted. The coordinator saw him coming and her eyebrows went up slightly. She stepped aside as the man climbed the stage steps and walked directly to Lisa. Up close, he had kind eyes and a face that showed he smiled often. But right now, he looked serious, intense. "That was extraordinary," he said, and his voice had the kind of authority that made people listen. "I'm Robert Torres. I run the Metropolitan Art Center downtown." Lisa's heart jumped. Everyone in the music world knew that name. The Metropolitan Art Center was one of the most prestigious venues in the city. Major symphonies performed there, world-famous soloists. It was the kind of place she'd dreamed about playing when she was still in school. "I've been in this business for 30 years, Robert continued, and I've heard thousands of pianists. What you just did up here, that wasn't just technically good. That had soul. That's rare, really rare." Lisa didn't know what to say. Her mouth felt dry. "Thank you" seemed way too small for what he was telling her. "We're launching a new series at the center," Robert said. "Emerging artists. Musicians who deserve a bigger platform. I'd like you to be part of our fall season." The words didn't make sense at first. Lisa just stared at him, trying to process what he'd said. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want you to perform at the Metropolitan Arts Center. A full recital. We'll pay you, of course. A proper fee, not some token amount. And we'll help you prepare, get you back into performance shape if you've been away from it." Lisa's mind was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Waitresses didn't just walk on stage and get offered concert dates at prestigious venues. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "Why would you do this?" Robert smiled for the first time, and it completely changed his face. "Because talent like yours doesn't come along every day. And because I'd be an idiot to let you walk out of here and disappear back into whatever you were doing before tonight." Other people were approaching now. The woman in the designer dress who'd been sitting in the third row. The tech CEO from the back. They were all converging on the stage, and they all wanted to talk to Lisa. The woman got there first. "I'm Diana Hoffman," she said, extending her hand. "I run a foundation that supports arts education. We'd love to talk to you about a scholarship program. If you want to finish your degree, we can help with that." Lisa shook her hand automatically, still trying to catch up with everything that was happening. The tech CEO was next. "Vincent Lee," he said. "I sponsor several artists every year, cover their expenses so they can focus on their craft instead of worrying about rent. I'd like to add you to that list." More people kept coming. A music teacher offering free lessons. A recording studio owner wanting to make a demo. Someone from the local news station asking if she'd be willing to do an interview. It was overwhelming. Completely overwhelming. 10 minutes ago, Lisa had been a nobody. Now everyone wanted a piece of her. The coordinator was standing off to the side, watching all of this with a complicated expression on her face. When there was finally a break in the crowd, she approached Lisa. "I owe you an apology," she said, and she actually looked uncomfortable saying it. "I shouldn't have dismissed you the way I did. That was wrong of me." Lisa didn't know what to say to that either. The coordinator had been harsh, it was true. But she'd also taken a huge risk by letting an unknown server perform at a high-profile event. Without that risk, none of this would be happening. "You gave me a chance," Lisa said finally. "That's what matters." The coordinator nodded, looking relieved. "For what it's worth, that was one of the best performances I've ever seen in this venue. And I've seen a lot." As the crowd around her started to thin, Lisa caught sight of her fellow servers watching from the sides of the room. Some looked happy for her. Others looked shocked. A few seemed almost resentful, like she'd somehow cheated by having this hidden talent. One of them, a guy named Tony who'd worked there even longer than Lisa, caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up and a genuine smile. That small gesture meant more than all the praise from the wealthy guests. Tony knew what it was like to work those long shifts, to be invisible, to dream of something more. His approval felt real. Robert was back holding a business card. "This has my direct number," he said, pressing it into her hand. "Call me next week. We'll set up a meeting, work out the details for your performance. Don't lose this card." Lisa looked down at it. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. The kind of business card that cost more than her daily tips. "I won't," she promised. As the event started to wind down and guests began filtering out, Lisa found herself alone for a moment at the side of the stage. She looked back at the piano, still sitting there under the spotlight. 3 years ago, she'd walked away from music because she had to, because life gave her no choice. She'd told herself it was okay, that she was fine with serving drinks and clearing plates, that her music career had just been a young person's dream anyway. But standing here now, with business cards in her pocket and promises of performances and scholarships, she realized something important. She hadn't walked away from music. She'd just taken a detour, a long, painful detour through hospital bills and double shifts and pretending she was someone she wasn't. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her mom. "How was work tonight, honey?" Lisa looked at the message for a long moment. How was work? Where did she even start? How did you explain that your entire life had just changed in the space of one song? She typed back, "Different. Really different. I'll tell you everything when I get home." As she walked toward the staff room to clock out, Lisa passed a mirror hanging in the hallway. She stopped and looked at herself. Same server uniform, same tired eyes, same person on the outside, but everything on the inside had shifted. She wasn't just a server anymore. She wasn't just a former music student who'd given up her dreams. She was a pianist again, and this time she wasn't going to let anything take that away from her. Tomorrow she'd call Robert. She'd start planning her return to music. She'd figure out how to balance her job with practice time, how to prepare for a real performance at a real venue. But tonight, right now, she let herself feel something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Lisa didn't sleep much that night. She kept replaying the performance in her head. The feel of the keys under her fingers, the sound filling the ballroom, the looks on people's faces. Every few minutes, she'd reach over to her nightstand and touch the stack of business cards sitting there, just to make sure they were real. Her mom had cried when Lisa told her what happened. Happy tears this time, not the scared, exhausted tears from 3 years ago. She'd hugged Lisa so tight it almost hurt. "I knew you'd find your way back," her mom had said. "I always knew." Monday morning came too soon. Lisa had to work the lunch shift at the hotel. Part of her wanted to call in sick to spend the day practicing instead. But rent was still due next week. Bills didn't stop just because you had a good night. When she walked into the hotel staff room, everyone went quiet. Then Tony started clapping, slow and dramatic, and soon the whole room joined in. Lisa's face went red, but she was smiling. "Look at you, famous already," Tony said, grinning. "Should I get your autograph now before you forget about us little people?" "Shut up," Lisa laughed, but it felt good. Felt normal. She needed normal right now. Her manager called her into his office before her shift started. He was a stern guy, always serious about professionalism and protocols. Lisa had barely spoken to him beyond the standard work stuff. "Sit down," he said, and his expression was unreadable. Lisa sat, her stomach doing nervous flips. Was she in trouble? Had she broken some rule by performing? The coordinator had given her permission, but maybe there was some policy she didn't know about. "I heard about Friday night," he said. "Here it comes," Lisa thought. "The hotel board had a meeting this morning. We've decided to start a program, an arts fund for staff members who want to pursue creative careers. We're calling it the Chen Fund." Lisa's jaw dropped. "What? You've worked here for 3 years. Showed up on time, never complained, did your job well. We never knew you had this talent. Made us realize we probably don't know a lot about our staff, what they're capable of, what they're sacrificing to work here." He slid a folder across the desk toward her. "We're offering you a reduced schedule with the same benefits, part-time hours, but you keep your health insurance. It won't be a lot of money, but maybe it'll be enough to let you practice, to prepare for whatever comes next." Lisa stared at the folder, then at him. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. You earned this." He paused. "Also, the coordinator from Friday's event called. Said if we didn't take care of you, she'd hire you away from us. So this is partly to keep you from leaving." Lisa laughed, surprised. "She said that?" "She did." "Apparently you made quite an impression." Over the next few weeks, Lisa's life became a whirlwind. She called Robert on Tuesday. By Thursday, she had a date for her performance. 3 months away. It sounded far until she really thought about how much work she needed to do. 3 years away from serious practice wasn't nothing. Her technique was still there, but it was rusty. She needed to polish it, strengthen it, get back to the level she'd been at before. Diana's foundation came through with the scholarship. Full tuition to finish her degree, plus a stipend for living expenses. Lisa cried when she got the letter. She'd spent so long thinking that door was closed forever. Vincent, the tech CEO, set up a monthly payment to cover her rent. "Focus on music," he'd said simply. Money shouldn't be the thing that stops you. The music teacher who'd offered lessons turned out to be Professor Chen, no relation. She'd taught at Westfield Conservatory for 20 years and remembered Lisa from her audition. "I knew you were special then," Professor Chen said at their first lesson. "I was so sorry to hear you'd left. But now you're back. Let's make sure you're ready." They worked hard. 3 times a week, 2 hours each session. Professor Chen was demanding, pushing Lisa to remember everything she'd learned, to fix the small bad habits that had crept in during her time away. "Your right hand is still beautiful," she'd say. "But your left hand is getting lazy." Again, it was exhausting. Lisa would finish a practice session with her hands aching and her back sore. But it was the good kind of tired, the kind that meant you were building something. The local news did run that story. Lisa almost said no, but her mom convinced her to do it. "People need to hear stories like yours," her mom said. "People who think they've missed their chance. You can show them it's not too late." The segment aired on a Tuesday evening. Lisa watched it with her mom, hiding behind a pillow, cringing at seeing herself on screen. But the reporter had done a good job. Focused on the journey, not just the dramatic moment. Talked about sacrifice and second chances. Her phone exploded afterward. Old friends from the conservatory reaching out. People she hadn't talked to in years saying they'd seen the story, saying they were proud of her. Even some of her old teachers sent messages. The video went viral online. Suddenly, millions of people had watched her performance. The hotel had security footage from that night and someone had leaked it. Lisa playing in her server uniform, the audience rising to their feet. It got shared everywhere. Comments poured in from all over the world, people saying she'd inspired them. Others sharing their own stories of dreams they'd put aside. Some just saying the music had made them cry. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. The months flew by. Practice lessons, coursework for her degree, and still some shifts at the hotel. Lisa barely had time to breathe. But she'd never felt more alive, finally. The night of her performance at the Metropolitan Arts Center arrived. Lisa stood backstage in a long black concert dress that Diana's foundation had helped her buy. It was elegant and simple, and when she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the person staring back. Not the server anymore. Not the struggling dropout. A pianist. A real one. She could hear the audience filing in on the other side of the curtain. The venue held 400 people. It was sold out. Every single seat taken, Robert found her backstage. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Lisa admitted. "Good, that means you care." He smiled. "You're going to be wonderful. Just remember why you're here. Remember that feeling from the hotel." The lights dimmed. Lisa heard the audience settle into their seats. The stage manager gave her the signal. She walked out onto the stage and the applause washed over her. But this time was different from the hotel. These people hadn't come to network or drink champagne. They'd come specifically to hear her play. They'd bought tickets. They'd believed she was worth their time and money. That thought made her stand a little straighter. Lisa sat at the piano, another beautiful Steinway. She adjusted the bench, took a breath, and looked out at the sea of faces. Somewhere in the audience, she knew her mom was sitting. Tony from the hotel had come too. Professor Chen was there. Diana and Vincent. The coordinator from that first night. Robert, of course. All these people who'd believed in her when she'd barely believed in herself. But as her hands touched the keys, none of that mattered. She wasn't playing for them, not really. She was playing for that version of herself who'd had to walk away 3 years ago. For every late night when she'd wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. For every moment she'd felt invisible and forgotten. This was for all of that. The music started and Lisa let herself disappear into it. Not hiding this time. Not running away.